I'm Becky L. McCoy, and you're listening to Stories of Unfolding Grace, the podcast about grace during unexpected times. You'll hear from real people dealing with hard stuff, and I hope you'll feel encouraged that you can bravely live through hard stuff too. Hey friends, it's been a while. I got crazy busy with getting ready for the writers conference She Speaks that I went to in July, and the podcast just totally got put on the back burner. But now we're back, and I'm really excited. This week's episode is with my friend Robin Chapman. She's talking about her struggle with miscarriage and grieving. And on a happy note, the baby that she talks about being pregnant with in this episode is just about 2 weeks old at the time that this podcast episode is available. So that's super exciting. Here is my chat with Robin Chapman. I'm here with Robin Chapman of Grace Enough for Us. And Robin, why don't you tell us a little bit about this particularly difficult season you're going to share about?
Last August, I found out that I was expecting my fourth child, and I was excited but a little nervous. Well, mostly nervous to start out with. The numbers 3 and 4 would be 17 months apart, which I've done with the first two. Yeah, I did that between the first two, and then there was a bigger gap, and so I know what kind of crazy that is. Mm-hmm. But after some, talking it through with my husband and praying about it, I got to a place actually really quickly where I was genuinely excited for this little person. And then I tested negative, which was weird, and then positive again. And it just kind of, eventually I wound up miscarrying. It was a really early one, so I kind of only barely knew that I was pregnant. Like the test could only barely pick it up. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't miscarried before, so 3 healthy children, and I knew the stats. I'm pretty good at math, and I understand that this happens to a lot of women, but it had never happened to me, so it's kind of just a theoretical possibility in my mind, and suddenly it was very real.
So how did you react emotionally?
I had never miscarried before, but I'd gone home with some friends. I really expected to be mad and angry and confused and hurt. What I didn't realize would happen was I went totally numb. I didn't cry. I didn't really feel sad. But Brene Brown talks about not being able to numb selectively. Mm-hmm. So that means I also didn't laugh. I didn't have any words. I wasn't able to interact with my family well. But it was kind of funny. You know how kids are little mirrors? And I don't know if you've ever gotten laryngitis, but it's a little bit strange how quiet your house gets when Mama has laryngitis. And my house was really quiet because I had no words at all. And I kind of settled into sort of bare minimum. I didn't feel sad or anything. I wasn't able to get the things done that I needed to do. Groceries with 3 kids at the time under 5. Trips out were really, trips out are still hard, but...
right, I was going to say, that's kind of impossible feeling, like, without the grief part.
it's a ridiculous hassle already, and I just couldn't even bring myself to do it, so, we would have some more pasta,
right.
and I didn't, and so my husband completely started shopping for me, which was very kind of him. He still does that because he's nice, but I hadn't really expected grief to look like such laziness, I didn't see that anywhere in the classic 5 stages of grief.
Right.
So because I shared it publicly, a friend checked in on me, actually an acquaintance from high school, and I told her that I realized that grief looked so much like obscene laziness, and she's like, that sounds like depression. I'm like, oh, Well, yes, it does. I'm pretty familiar with depression. I've dealt with it a couple of times, and it's just not something I'm afraid of or unfamiliar with. And I would have recognized it in anybody else,
right?
Except that it was me, and I didn't, and my husband didn't, and my best friend didn't, because they were so in it with me that they just didn't see it. And I adjusted my meds, and I visited a therapist to confront some of the lies that were making it really hard for me to grieve.
So what did you struggle with most in this period of grief? And do you feel like you handled the situation well or not well? What did it look like for you?
I feel like I handled it honestly. Miscarriage is, culturally, it's a really silent loss. People in my circles tend not to share pregnancy for the whole first trimester, just in case. In case what? Well, in case you lose the baby, and then what? You don't have to share the miscarriage, except that there was a baby and she died, and now it feels really weird and very taboo to say anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't shared it publicly because it had only been a week and a half since I'd found out, and that week and a half was filled kind of with questions. It was kind of apparent that something was a little bit off, but now I was, and here I was losing it. And it seemed like other women just kind of move on from this. Like, statistics say it's a lot of women. I've heard 1 in 4, but then I've also heard that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which it stands to reason that makes more than 1 in 4 mothers, since a lot of women are pregnant more than once. And it seemed like they all seemed to move on okay, and I just wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like you had to just kind of like suck it up and deal with it on your own?
I felt like I was supposed to, but because I'm an external processor, I'm very much an introvert, but I have to process externally. That's, I have some friends that I talk things out with, or I write. That's actually most of why I started a blog, is because I don't know what I think until I write it down or say it. So in order for me to process it, I had to spit it out. And my husband he was very kind and empathetic, but he hadn't really attached to the pregnancy yet. Mm-hmm. So he could sit in me feeling bad, but he wasn't feeling bad himself. So it's kind of hard to process it well with him. So I kind of ignored the taboo and went ahead and wrote about it. As it happened. I think the day after my body let the baby go, I wrote about it. And I know that I can't be the only one who feels like not talking about it would be kind of dishonest, but feels pressure to not talk about it anyway. So I chose to do it, and I felt really weird. And the timing of it was weird. It happened to be like the Friday before a Sunday that I sang, so I was at church for both services without my kids. Mm-hmm. It felt very conspicuous.
Yeah, you can't just go and hide.
No, there was no way to hide. There was no way to just be distracted with my kids and busy. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
It turned out that people were amazing. There was no awkward. There was just kind of the right amount of interaction about it, and it was really good. And then I got pregnant again.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So what I said initially when I got pregnant with Hope, which is what we named the baby, is when I saw that faint pink line, I was like, oh, well, there's only one way this ends. And instead of saying that, my instant thought was, well, this could go one way or another. And I'm just so acutely aware of the other way. And I am only just now, when I wrote the story out to you, I wasn't quite halfway there, and I've since passed that. I'm 24 today, and it's starting to fade. It's starting to feel like there's a baby there, and she's going to make it. We did find out that this one's a girl, but the terror, especially for the whole first half, is just overwhelming.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah, and I just I talked to God about it, and I was even guarded talking to God about it.
Mm-hmm.
So this baby, if there's a baby that happens, I couldn't fully embrace this baby. It was very hard to hold on to hope for this baby, but still hold on to hope the baby that I lost. It felt like in being excited for the baby, I was somehow being untrue to the one that I lost. And it's just a whole bizarre mix of things. But I know that God is good. My husband lost his best friend to cancer right before all of us turned 21. And I watched him go through that. Andrew chose to believe that God is good. He never, ever wavered from that. And when we lost his friend, he chose to hold on to the goodness of God. And I have seen over the last, almost decade and a half, I've seen the fruit and the power that comes in trusting in God's goodness, even when bad things happen. I choose to believe in the goodness of God. And whether this baby survives his pregnancy or childhood into adulthood and outlives me, God remains good, regardless of the outcome.
I like how you said, it is a choice. We get to choose how we respond. And I think a lot of times people feel stuck to respond in a certain way.
I think of, the line from Job and from the song, he gives and takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
I get so excited to see people choosing to live bravely and authentically. Each week on Tuesdays and Fridays, I host a Facebook Live event to share more stories of people living bravely, and I want to hear your story too. Join us at facebook.com/Becky L. McCoy. I can only share so much with you here on the podcast, but you can read my story and learn more about living bravely and authentically at my blog, BeckyLMcCoy.com. Stop by and sign up to receive my monthly newsletter. It includes book recommendations and blog posts and podcast episodes you may have missed. Check the show notes for details. So I'm using this definition of grace as being good things that happen during really difficult times. How did you see grace show up?
The thing that felt really bizarre to do, which was to process on basically as public a platform as I have, became a catalyst for his grace. When I spoke up, support and experience materialized around me. You always hear that it's, 1 in 4 women or whatever, but you look around and you don't see them because nobody talks about it. But as I spoke about it, it became evident who was in this little secret group. So God used this for the good of his body. Lots of us actually sharing our stories together. Most obviously, he used it for his glory and the good of some of his children. Several weeks after my miscarriage, just about the time I started to be able to live my life again, my baby brother's wife, who is almost exactly 10 years younger than I am, lost their first just exactly when she found out she was pregnant. Because of the timing of it, we were able to walk through hers together, could share grief and we could share comfort, and she was able to handle hers in a way that felt authentic to her. She also decided she wanted to share her loss publicly, which raised some eyebrows, especially in her circles, because they're pretty young. They're 23, and so she doesn't have a great many friends who have already had children and miscarriages and stuff.
That's great that you could just walk through it together.
And also, my daughter, who was still 4 at the time, her compassion toward Amanda, my sister-in-law, and her joy at thinking of Amanda's baby and my baby playing together in heaven touched my heart in a way that I wouldn't have been able to receive or internalize when my loss was totally raw. So Jenna having her sweet childlike trust and her love and happiness and genuine grief for Amanda and her baby, we were able to minister to both Amanda and to me.
Wow, that's really neat. How do you feel like you've chosen to live bravely and authentically as a result of having this miscarriage?
Well, I'm really thankful that the prompting to share it publicly and immediately was too strong for me to ignore. It was probably the most terrifying thing that I've chosen to do. The vulnerability hangover was as intense as I've ever experienced.
Oh, I bet. I like that.
Yeah.
The vulnerability hangover. I'm writing that down because it's so true.
Right? That's a Brene Brown term. I love her.
Yeah, she's awesome.
But yeah, it was serious. Like I felt ill, but God used it for a lot of good in my life and a lot of good in the lives of the women around me, Ryan and Amanda's wife, my brother and sister-in-law. And it's also strengthened my conviction that authenticity, living authentically in a way that other people can see, is something that I'm called to. It's not just living true to the way God made me in my own little home, but living true to how He created me in front of whichever people He decides to put around me. And that really reinforced that feeling that's part of how he uses me in my life right now. So I continue to choose authenticity whenever I have that as an option. Whenever I get the Holy Spirit prompting that this is the right thing to do, I will go ahead and share, given the chance, despite the risk that's involved.
And it sounds like this is a conversation you have regularly, but if you were speaking with a woman who had recently experienced a miscarriage, what do you want to say to her? How would you encourage her?
I actually had a conversation, but it was brief. I was on my way to my 20-week ultrasound, and I handled it wrong. So I'll just respond to her. I said, I'm sorry, and she said, it's okay. And we both kind of shrugged, because it's okay is the thing that we say, because we don't know what else to say.
And it's not okay, but...
It really is so far from okay.
Yeah.
This is so not how it was made to be. And I know it's not how God created things to be. And I really am sorry. And it hurts, and it's okay to hurt. It's okay to hurt in whatever way, and process that hurt in whatever way you need to.
Yep.
And God is so good. Whatever the outcome of your pregnancy, or whatever the outcome of your trial, God is who God is, regardless of the bad things that happen, because we live in a fallen, broken world. And there's support to be found. You have to look hard for it in this kind of loss. Mm-hmm. It's available if you need it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being so open about something, like you said, it is taboo, and not many people feel free to be open about miscarriage. I know that there will be women who this is just really freeing for, because they didn't feel like they could talk about their experience.
And I really would, going public with it was surprisingly very freeing. And it actually created the support system I needed. If I hadn't done that, then the girl who messaged me and suggested that maybe I'm depressed.
You're right.
Didn't even know. You know? So I would have probably sat in my recliner for a good many more weeks before somebody figured it out, hopefully.
Right. That's really interesting. Yeah. I have 4 fun questions for you that are a bit more lighthearted so that we can get to know you a little better. The first is, what are you loving right now?
What am I loving right now? I am loving the thaw. It is just, so it's beginning of April, and it snowed this morning here in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Right. Yep.
And it'll snow again. But things are starting to melt, and the roads are not icy anymore in most places. And my kids can go outside and they can bike.
Yeah. What's your accumulation?
I don't even know. I should know that answer. I would say probably, it's so light. Most of it is so dry that it just kind of settles down. It doesn't melt for most of the year. But so I would say probably several feet. I should Google it. I should know the answer to that question.
It's okay. I'm just curious.
I would guess probably 4 to 8 feet, depending on the year.
Oh my word.
I don't know what it is right now. I don't know what it was this year. It was kind of a dry winter, which is probably going to be an active fire season. But
yeah, for sure.
So now I'm show loving, but my kids can go out and bike and burn energy. And
yes, for real. What is your favorite meal or snack or other food item?
I am currently very excited about the jalapeno burger I'm going to get with a friend tonight.
Ooh, yum.
Yeah. I don't crave anything weird when I'm pregnant, typically, but I do get very excited about the food that I want. I have some aversions, but mostly when I want something, I get really excited about it. I made some baked brie yesterday for a party that I had, and it was with like some raspberry chipotle sauce, kind of sliced it in half flatways, and poured some raspberry chipotle on one half, and then stacked the other half on top with with some more raspberry chipotle sauce on top. And I actually did two. One had raspberry chipotle sauce, and one had like Dijon and brown sugar mix.
Wow.
And then I topped them both with pecans and baked them just till they were soft. And it was amazing.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Well, if you're ever in Connecticut, you can come make that for me.
Yeah, I would be happy to do it. But if I'm not, it's really easy, you know?
Just
take it low and for a couple of minutes, and it's awesome.
Awesome. That's
yum. It's so good. And all of the people that came to my party happened to be on special diets, which I didn't really know ahead of time. And so there's a lot of leftovers. So I think when I get off the phone, I'm going to go.
Yeah, nice. Oh, I would totally. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
This week I'm trying really hard to get up ahead of my children, because if I don't, I've got kind of a set checklist of things that I try and do every morning.
Yep.
Which, involve little things like make myself protein shake, take my vitamins, and it involves things like write in my gratitude journal and read the Bible. And if I don't do that before the girls get up, even though we have like a set time that they're allowed to be making noise, if they're up before that, they're supposed to like read quietly, but it requires a lot of parental involvement to keep them reading quietly for that. Sometimes, hour and a half, if they're up before they get breakfast. So I'm trying really hard to get up, go to bed earlier, and get up earlier so that I can go through all of that stuff. Because if I don't, my day just goes downhill so quickly.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I get it.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to do all of it with the kids up. And sometimes I manage to get through my whole list of things, even when they're up. But sometimes I just correct them incessantly, and we all get very frustrated.
Yeah, you're behind before you even start. And my last question for you is, what are you doing to be brave?
What am I doing to be brave? I'm choosing to share my weaknesses as well as my wins. Both take a little bit of bravery to do, because when you share wins, there's always a risk. I had a really productive week, several weeks actually, last month, I think. I was just on a weird, nesting, cleaning binge. And I mentioned it in a blog post, and some people were like, I had to force myself to get through that part. I'm like, yeah, I know. I had a point, not just like, hey, look at me, I vacuumed the ceiling, literally.
Right. That's awesome.
I was going somewhere with it. But also my hard days, I somehow managed to wind up on there's kind of a rage that happens. I don't know if it's hormonal or physical or what's going on, but third trimester, every pregnancy, I just am angry. And I'm not a good mother to the children that I have, and I don't know why it is that we decided to have another one, because I'm clearly not doing a good job with the ones that we have. And last time my husband was like, when I was pregnant with my third, and he's like, well, at least when there are three of them, they can be a gang. I'm like, oh, good. Thanks, babe. So, and I don't know if that hit early or what, but I'm like growling and snapping at my kids, and I hate it. And it's my fault that they're misbehaving, because I'm not disciplining them well, because I'm stupid and missing things that I should be correcting much sooner. And so being real about that as well, both on my blog and just with the people around me, where I'm not doing that well, as a mom right now, and being okay, when people see me and I can't, I don't know what else to do in that moment except for get in the corner right now, just growling at them, and it's terrible. And I'm like, well, this is really what my life looks like someday.
Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please rate, review, and share Stories of Unfolding Grace. When you give it 5 stars, it goes a huge way in helping other people find the podcasts by increasing my ranking. If you're interested in sharing your own story of unfolding grace, head to my blog, beckylmccoy.com/submissions. I can't wait to hear from you. Next week on Stories of Unfolding Grace, I'm chatting with Jamie Ivey. You may know her from her podcast, Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey, and what she has to share about a time when she had to let go of a dream is just really amazing and so encouraging. If there's ever any time you've had to say no to something that you've always wanted, next week's episode is going to be a really encouraging one for you. Thanks again for joining me. I'm looking forward to next week.